The new set Duskmourn is full of exciting, powerful, and terrifying new cards. And this horror-themed set is getting players excited for so many formats. Is it because of the card designs make you feel like you're playing Magic inside of a horror film, unlocking doors and rooms and revealing horrible monsters? Or perhaps because the art brings back nostalgia of being scared at a sleepover? Or maybe it's because Halloween is right around the corner and it feels perfect to play your favorite game with spooky new cards. Honestly, it's all of the above. I'm NicPlz, and today we are breaking down the best Duskmourn cards for Limited, Standard, and Commander. My co-writer Sasha Jelton and I have put together a list of the best cards in Duskmourn that you'll want to be looking for when cracking packs in paper or on Arena. So grab your favorite blankie because things are about to get spooky as we break down the new Duskmourn set. First, we'll be taking a look at the limited format. Whether you're doing a pre-release at your local game store or drafting this set, these are the cards that you'll want to keep your eyes out for. We'll break down standout cards in each color from this set. And additionally, at the end, we'll take a look at some of the cards that you'll want to achieve the very spicy and spooky 5-color room strategy. Now, before we jump into each color, I do want to call out the land cyclers: Shepherding Spirit, Dagger Maw Megalodon, Spectre Snatcher, Bedhead Beastie, and Slavering Branch Snapper. These cards can be a great way to reduce the likelihood of flooding by drawing too many lands in a game. The more of these spooky cards you pop in your deck, the fewer lands you'll need to play, since they can be cycled when you need lands or cast as big creatures when you don't. Now for white, we should start off talking about a room card. Room cards are the exciting new enchantments. Play one door as an enchantment and then later unlock the other door at sorcery speed. And for white, Surgical Suite, Hospital Room is a great uncommon that you want to keep your eyes out for. For 2 mana, the left door lets you return a creature with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And for 4 mana, the right side allows you to put a +1/+1 counter on an attacking creature whenever you attack. Both offer excellent value for an efficient cost of mana. Then we have Trapped in the Screen. Awesome removal attached to an enchantment with Ward 2, allowing you to exile an artifact, creature, or an enchantment that an opponent controls. This set has a ton of synergies when enchantments enter the battlefield, so this card can offer a little bit more value. Plus, it's a common, so don't be surprised if you see this often. Another strong piece of removal attached to an enchantment is the aura Sheltered by Ghost. Enchant creature you control. When the aura enters, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Sheltered by Ghost leaves. Your enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has lifelink and ward 2. This is a great removal spell and gets better if you're running enchantment synergies. Now, speaking of enchantment synergies, we have the 1-drop creature Optimistic Scavenger. It has Eerie. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Now, these +1/+1 counters add up quick with the number of enchantments and rooms in this set. Then we have the 3/3 drop Glimmer Seeker. At the beginning of your second main phase, if it's tapped, draw a card if you control a Glimmer creature. If you don't control one, create a 1/1 white Glimmer enchantment creature token. The token being an enchantment creature helps synergize. Plus, getting extra card draw in white is always solid. Now, some bombs in white to look out for are Enduring Innocence, Ghostly Dancers, and the Wandering Rescuer. The Wandering Rescuer is easy to get down while being a house in combat, and the other two generate a lot of value the longer they stay in play. Now, Ghostly Dancers is extra nice since it'll return an enchantment card from your yard when it enters, or unlock a room for free to start pumping out those 3/1 flyers. Now, of course, blue has plenty to offer in this limited format. One of the rooms we're liking the most in limited is Bottomless Pool Locker Room. The left door will bounce a creature to hand, while the right door will draw you a card every time you hit your opponent with your creatures. And the new mechanic Manifest Dread is powerful in this set. It allows you to look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one into your graveyard, and the other one face down on the battlefield as a 2/2 creature. And of course, if it's a creature, you can flip it over at any time for its mana value. So that means that Paranormal Analyst becomes an incredible resource for card advantage. Whenever you Manifest Dread, put a card put into your graveyard this way into your hand. This card pushes the mechanic to become even more powerful in your favor, essentially drawing you a card every time you Manifest Dread. Flood Pit's Drowner is a creature with tons of value on it. It has flash and vigilance, and when it enters, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. And additionally, you can pay 1 blue, 1 generic, and tap. Shuffle it and the target creatures with a stun counter on it into their owner's libraries. An excellent evasive creature with additional ways to help control the board. Now, Fear of Isolation can synergize well with your room enchantments. As an additional cost to cast it, return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. This can help you replay room enchantments and get a lot of extra value. value. And for removal, we have Unable to Scream, another awesome enchantment aura that makes this creature it's attached to lose all abilities and become a 0/2 toy artifact creature. A 1 mana pseudo removal spell that triggers all of your eerie effects is fantastic in this set. Now for standout bombs in blue, we have Enduring Curiosity, Envy Tracker, and Abhorrent Oculus. The first two here are going to help get massively ahead on card advantage. And the Oculus is a huge flyer that will manifest dread on each of your opponent's upkeeps. Now of course black has some wicked stuff in this set. For removal, we have 3 awesome enchantments that you'll want to keep your eyes out for. The Aura Cracked Skull enchants a creature, and when it's dealt any damage, destroy it. Plus you get a Thoughtseize effect when it enters as well. Another removal aura spell is Sporogenic Infection. Enchant creature. When Sporogenic Infection enters, target player sacrifices a creature other than the enchanted creature. And when enchanted creature is dealt damage, destroy it. This is a very effective way to deal with 2 creatures for only 2 mana. And Nowhere to Run is sweet. It has Flash. When it enters, target creature and opponent control gets -3/-3 until end of turn. Plus its static ability removes any hexproof or ward abilities from your opponent's creatures. Osseous Stick Twister and Popular Egotist are standout creatures in black. The Stick Twister is already great as a 2/2 lifelinker for 2, but once you have Delirium, it will deal damage to your opponents equal to its power at the beginning of each of your end steps, unless they sack a non-land permanent or discard a card. And since it has lifelink, you'll gain life each time it does damage this way. And the Egotist is a great threat and sack outlet that helps drain and gain whenever you sacrifice anything. Holding up the ability to give it indestructible will make it really hard for your opponents to deal with in combat if they don't have high toughness creatures. Now the bombs to look for in black are quite terrifying. The Room Unholy Annex Ritual Chamber is a standout. The left door unlocks a Phyrexian Arena effect that triggers at your end step. Draw a card and lose 2 life. And when you control a demon, instead it drains your opponents and you gain 2 life. Plus the right door unlocks a 6/6 black demon creature token with flying for only 5 mana. So altogether, this card has a scary amount of value. Unstoppable Slasher is a hard card for your opponents to deal with. They won't want to block because it has Death Touch, but if they don't, then they'll lose half of their life. Even if they end up killing it, it automatically comes back again. Overlord of the Baelmer can be played as an enchantment as early as turn 2, then becomes a creature after your 5th end step after casting it for its impending cost. The self-mill and recursion on this card is no joke. Now of course, red really brings the heat in this limited format. Betrayer's Bargain, Scorching Dragonfire, and Trial of Agony are all incredible removal spells. All of these are absolute musts if you're playing in red. Adding that both Betrayer's Bargain and Scorching Dragonfire will exile the creature they remove, which can be crucial in this set knowing that there is a ton of graveyard shenanigans. Turn Inside Out is an awesome pump spell for only 1 mana, giving target creature +3/+0, and also allows you to manifest dread if the target dies. And of course the reprint Pyroclasm can help clear out the board, especially if your opponent has a ton of manifested 2/2 creatures. This is a card that I am absolutely excited to see reprinted. Now some of the bombs to be looking out for in red are cards like Enduring Courage, which gives your creatures haste and pumps them +2/+0 until end of turn when they enter. Excellent in any creature heavy or token strategy. Then there's the Room Enchantment Charred Foyer Warp Space. The left door will give you an extra card each turn that you can play from exile, while the right door allows you to cast a single spell in exile for free rather than its mana cost. Hello, good red value. And lastly, Overlord of the Boiler Bilges is just flat out nasty. Whenever it enters or attacks, it deals 4 damage to any target. This bomb can take over the game very quickly if unanswered. Now moving on to green. Wickerfolk Thresher is flat out awesome in any deck playing green. A 5/4 for 4 is just a good rate in limited. Plus when you attack, if you have Delirium, you look at the top 4 cards of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. If it's a non-land, it will go into your hand. Awesome card advantage on a big efficient body. Another great creature is Patchwork Beastie, a 3/3 for 1 green mana. It won't be able to attack or block until you have Delirium. However, at the beginning of each upkeep, you may mill a card. This is an awesome enabler for a Delirium deck. Monstrous Emergence is a great removal spell in green that can avoid the downside that green removal spells sometimes have. You can avoid the common blowout that a lot of these green effects have of your opponents killing your creatures in response to you casting the spell. And you can even choose a creature from your hand. Next, we have Defiant Survivor. If it's tapped at the beginning of your second main phase, you manifest Dread. Great value here on a 3-drop creature. Speaking of manifesting Dread, the card Under the Skin is good in any green deck, but extra juicy in a deck with a graveyard plan. Manifest Dread, then you may return a permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. It is important to call out that you can even return the card you put in your graveyard with the manifested Dread effect, allowing you to get full value out of it even if your graveyard is empty. And of course in green, the bomb problems are big and beefy. Omnivorous Flytrap can be a huge problem if unanswered. If you have Delirium, forward card types in your graveyard, when it enters or attacks, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on 1 or 2 target creatures. Then if you have 6 cards in your graveyard, double the number of +1/+1 counters on those creatures. Even the normal Delirium effect is really strong for a 3-drop, but once you get 6 types in your yard, this card just goes extra hard. Balustrade Worm is a big 5/5 for 5 with Trample and Haste, and if you have Delirium, you can return it from your graveyard for only 4 mana with a Finality counter on it. This big worm will be a problem to deal with for your opponents, and they'll often have to deal with it twice. And lastly, Valgavoth's Onslaught is just pure power. For double X and a green, manifest Dread X times. Then put X +1/+1 counters on each of those creatures. This card is a fantastic rate no matter what you choose for X. Now looking at all the Signpost multicolored cards in this set, you really can't go wrong with any of them. They are all incredibly strong and limited. However, here are the ones that we thought were the best. Gremlin Tamer, Wildfire Wickerfolk, Arabella Abandoned Doll, Fear of Infinity, Sawblade Skin Ripper, Roaring Furnace, Steaming Sauna, Rite of the Moth, Brood Spinner, Oblivious Bookworm, and Baseball Bat. Okay, now if you're wanting to be spicy and do the 5-color rooms, here's exactly what you want to be looking for to achieve it. You don't have to have Marina Vandrel to do the 5-color rooms, but having her really is the dream. When she enters, reveal the top 7 cards of your library and put all enchantments into your hand. Plus you can tap to lock or unlock any door of a target room you control. So my co-writer Sasha Jelton and I playtested some 1v1 limited pools, and one of them had everything we're about to include in this list for the 5-color room strategy. And I just want to say that Marina hitting the board was basically game over. She generates so much value when she enters, plus providing a ton of extra value if she stays in play. Now you'll likely want to focus on only 2 or 3 colors and splash the other colors if you're trying to do a full-on 5-color room deck. But no matter how you go about it, you will likely want some of the green rooms to help make the mana actually work. Greenhouse allows all of your lands to tap for any color, and once this is online, you're going to be cooking. Moldering Gym is also great to fix your mana by allowing you to ramp for any basic land in your deck. And after that, blue is going to be the best color to enable your deck to take over any game. The control elements will help you manipulate the board state and slow down the aggressive decks. Promising Stairs is a pretty fun win con if you're building this deck. At your upkeep, if you control 8 or more different names among unlocked doors of rooms you control, you just win the game. What's really funny is that when we playtested this strategy, even though we had Promising Stairs in our 5-color room pool, the deck was dominant even without the alternative win con. There is just so much value in each of these rooms, and it really was a blast setting this up. This strategy is strong, but it will be hard to pull off in any pool, so do not force it. The deck will be soft to aggro deck, so do be mindful of that. But if you get to the late game in a rooms deck, you are going to be up to your ears in value, my friends. The next format we'll be covering is Standard. Now Standard just went through a massive rotation, so there are currently a lot of changes already happening in the format. Duskmourn offers a lot of new exciting cards for the freshly rotated format. There are a couple of cards that we feel can slot into existing meta decks. However, most of the cards that my co-writer Sasha and I are calling out here are ones that we think have the strongest potential to brew around with. Now one of the most critical things to get rotated out of Standard were the Triumph lands. So with that, mana was the first thing that stood out to us. The new Verge lands don't offer much to domain strategies like the Triumph lands did, but they do offer more options for current and future tiered decks. These are untapped lands that add a second color if you control one of the 2 basic land types. And we're excited to see how these will be utilized in the Standard format. Now there are 3 cycles of cards that we believe are going to be of interest to Standard brewers. The Enduring Glimmer cycle has a sweet ability of being a creature that once it dies comes back as an enchantment, so the abilities attached to them will stick around longer. We believe the most likely to see play are the white, blue, and red ones. Enduring Innocence has whenever one or more other creatures you control with power 2 or less enters, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. This will be excellent in any decks that are constantly putting small creatures into play, allowing decks to keep playing out more and more to the board while keeping card advantage flowing. Enduring Curiosity has flash, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This is going to be a strong card in any control or tempo based deck. And Enduring Courage has, whenever another creature you control enters, it gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn, a potential card in an aggro and token strategy deck. The mana cost of 4 might limit it a little bit in an aggro deck, but pumping out and hasting all of your future plays is very strong. Next up is the Impeding Overlord cycle. We do think the jury will be initially out on these cards. They have very interesting effects and will be fun to brew around with, but the one that stood out to us most is the green Overlord of the Hauntwoods, and the potential home for this one is in the Domain decks. And that's because for its 3 mana and pending cost, it fully turns on Domain by itself. Whenever it enters or attacks, create a tapped colorless land token named Everywhere that is every basic land type. Once this happens, all of your leyline bindings are now just 1 white mana. Next up, of course, are the Leylines. 4 of these are new cards and 1 of them is a reprint. Most of these have a pretty heavy build around element to them that don't exactly fit into current decks, so we'll see if anyone has something spicy with these potentially free enchantments. The red Leyline of Residence feels like a fun play around for a Spellslinger build, but the mana cost is steep if it's not in your opening hand. But most notably, Leyline of the Void is back in Standard. This gives decks more options for graveyard hate in their sideboards. This card is best against degenerate graveyard decks, so we may not see a lot of it immediately, but it is a great tool to have in case a big graveyard deck emerges in the meta. Now, before we jump into each color, I do want to call out 2 important reprints that are greatly welcomed in Standard. First is Pyroclasm. This is a classic card that works great in sideboards against go-wide decks, and I am so excited to see this one reprinted. And then there is another classic, Ethereal Armor. This card may or may not see a lot of immediate play, but it is a powerful piece in an aura/enchantment style aggro tempo deck. Of course, the Bogle's archetype does come to mind, so in the future, do keep your eyes out for small, hard-to-kill creatures. I would actually really like to see that deck happen in Standard. Given Bloomburrow had so many strong enchantments and now Duskmourn has so many strong enchantments, perhaps a new Enchantress archetype will emerge. Speaking of strong enchantments, let's take a look at what White has to offer us. First is the Aura Shard Mage's Rescue. It has Flash, enchant creature you control. As long as Shard Mage's Rescue entered this turn, enchanted creature has hexproof. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1. An incredibly strong ability on just the 1-drop. This could pair well with Ethereal Armor. Ashlizzle, can you please make Ethereal Armor happen? Thanks, bestie. Next is a Nether Aura Sheltered by Ghosts. Enchant creature you control. When Sheltered by Ghosts enters, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Sheltered by Ghosts leaves the battlefield. Enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has lifelink and ward 2. Again, awesome value for really not much mana. And lastly for White, we have the Wandering Rescuer. A 3/5 creature for 5 but has Flash and Convoke. Plus Double Strike and other tap creatures you control have hexproof. This is just a generically good card and offers a lot of protection for your board state. Next up is the color Blue. Sasha and I could not stop thinking about how powerful Entity Tracker is. It has Flash and Eerie. Whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, draw a card. Again, a lot of really good enchantment synergies here to brew around with. Then there is Flood Pit's Drowner. It has Flash and Vigilance. When it enters, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. For 1 blue and 1 generic, tap. Shuffle Flood Pit's Drowner and target creature with a stun counter on it into their owner's libraries. Great creature for any tempo deck. And lastly in blue is the flyer Fear of Isolation. As an additional cost to cast the spell, return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. Basically a blue core Skyfisher that will also synergize with any enchantment-based strategies. Now on to black. The room enchantment Unholy Annex Ritual Chamber is just pure wicked fun. The left door is a better Phyrexian Arena. Important to call out that the draw trigger is on the end step, so if it's removed on your opponent's next turn, you'll at least get 1 card draw from it. You do lose 2 life from the draw, but once you control a demon, you gain 2 life and your opponent loses 2 life. And when the right door unlocks, you get a 6/6 black demon creature token with flying. That's pretty metal if you ask me. And now we have Winter's Intervention. It deals 2 damage to target creature, you gain 2 life. It is hard to say if this card will see much play, but if the meta shifts to be more and more aggressive, then this definitely has potential. I am genuinely interested in what the Standard community does think about this one though. And speaking of removal is Withering Torment. Destroy target creature or enchantment, you lose 2 life. You can't be mad at instant speed enchantment removal in black. A lot of good sideboard potential with this one. I think mono black players are going to be especially happy to see this when opening packs. Now moving on to red, of course we got the heat. The Roller Crusher ride is pretty intriguing to brew around with. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a permanent or player, while there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, it deals double that damage instead. When Roller Crusher ride enters, it deals X damage up to X target creatures. For just 3 mana, this is a great non-combat doubler. Plus, it's pretty effective as a mass removal spell too. Next is Screaming Nemesis. It's a hasty 3/3 for 3. Whenever Screaming Nemesis is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target. If a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game. Some nice burn damage, plus the ability to limit life gain for the rest of the game can be relevant. And lastly in red, we have the pump spell Violent Urge. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. If you have Delirium, it gets double strike until end of turn. This card wants to be in a prowess deck, which we are seeing plenty of at the moment, but the question of whether Delirium limits the capabilities or not is one for brewers to consider. And now we are moving on to green. Balustrade Worm has such good stats and can be reoccurred with a finality counter on it if you have Delirium. And Trample and Haste on a 5/5 is no joke. Plus the fact that it can't be countered is a big bonus. Insidious Fungus is a small little dude that has a lot going on for it. Pay 2, sacrifice it, and choose 1. Destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, draw a card, then you may put a land card from your hands onto the battlefield tab. This will most likely be a sideboard card, but it could find a main board home in the right recursion deck. And lastly in green is Valgavoth's Onslaught. The cost is double X and 1 green. Manifest Dread X times, then put X +1/+1 counters on each of those creatures. Everyone that plays Standard has seen domain decks cast Herd Migrations to get 15 power and toughness for 7. And now you can get that same power of a late game payoff without even having to worry about domain. Onslaught will put the same power and toughness into play for 7 mana, but it can also play into the board earlier or scale even larger for any big mana decks. And the fact that this can also dig to find you some great creatures to manifest and fill your yard with is absolutely no joke. Now lastly, we had a couple multicolored cards that stood out to Sasha and myself. Arabella Abandoned Doll could be good in the Boros token decks. Whenever it attacks, it deals X damage to each opponent and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures you control with power 2 or less. This creepy doll could absolutely take over games once your token engine is online. Now we've talked a lot about the potential of a white-blue Enchantress deck, and Gremlin Tamer could be a great payoff for that. A 2/2 for 2. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, create a 1/1 red gremlin creature token. All around awesome value in the right deck. Wildfire Wickerfolk doesn't have an immediate home, but the stats offer a lot to play around with. A 3/2 for 2 with haste, plus it gets +1/+1 and trample if you have Delirium. A 4/3 trampler with haste is incredibly powerful for only 2 mana. I think there's a lot to like about this Scarecrow. Now the Jeskai control decks will like the Room Enchantment Roaring Furnace, Steaming Sauna. The left door is a strong removal spell and the right door is excellent at providing card advantage. Now Drag to the Roots is interesting. If you can consistently get Delirium by turn 3 in the Golgari decks, then it could have some potential as a non-land permanent removal spell. This is just another cool tool for the Golgari mid-range decks to play around with, because they absolutely needed it, right? Now lastly, we'll be taking a look at the exciting new cards that will be making an appearance in the format of Commander. There's a lot of Commander tricks in all of these Duskmourn treats. First, let's take a look at the color white. Enduring Innocence is a card that any mono white go wide token strategy will appreciate, especially if you have the ability to create tokens or flash in creatures on other players' turns. You can't be mad at giving a white extra card draw based on things that it already does well. Ghostly Dancers is awesome enchantment recursion and pairs well with any Enchantress deck. Its last ability can result in creating a dominating board presence. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, create a 3/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Good stuff. Now Leyline of Hope is a life gain piece that comes in for an efficient rate. If it's in your opening hand, it is free, but even at 4 mana, it's a pretty solid rate. If you would gain life, you gain that much life +1 instead. As long as you have at least 7 life or more than your starting life total, creatures you control get +2/+2. If you're life gaining in white, this is an awesome piece to include into your deck. Now the Room Enchantment Dollmaker Shop Porcelain Gallery can just be flat out busted in the right deck. The left door helps you create a toy artifact creature token whenever you attack with a non-toy creature, and the right door can buff your board to an alarming state. Creatures you control have base power and toughness, each equal to the number of creatures you control. White decks creating tokens are going to love this half of the card. It's just going to get out of control. Another room is Secret Arcade Dusty Parlor, another awesome piece for an enchantment deck. The left door makes all of your permanents and spells enchantments in addition to their other types, and the right door helps buff creatures on your board. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to that spell's mana value on up to 1 target creature. A lot of value on both of these doors for a very efficient rate. Now for blue Commander cards, there's a lot of fun in this set, but the cards that stood out to us were all based around enchantments, which is really exciting because when you think of an Enchantress deck, blue isn't necessarily the first color that comes to mind. Fear of Imposters is an enchantment creature with flash. When it enters, it counters a spell. The controller of the spell manifests Dread, a really good rate for 3 mana. Enduring Curiosity is another creature with flash, and addition, when it dies, it comes back as an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Noting that it's when a creature, so it gets a card draw off each creature that connects with an opponent. This card is going to provide blue decks so much value. Personally, I can see this one becoming a pretty popular card from the set. And Entity Tracker is just flat out good value. Another flash creature that has whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, draw a card. This card alone makes me excited about building a blue base Enchantress deck in Commander. Then we have the room enchantment Mirror Room Fractured Realm, and it's just awesome value on one card. The left side creates a token copy of a creature you control, and the right side is a blue Panharmonicon that also doubles all of your other triggered abilities like upkeep effects, etc. Yes, the mana rate is a little high here, but given it's on a single card is something to be truly excited about. And lastly is Leyline of Transformation. As Leyline of Transformation enters, choose a creature type. Creatures you control are the chosen type in addition to their other types. The same is true for other creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. A very powerful effect in Commander and will work well in decks that are trying to get extra value of unique but powerful creature type effects. Think of commanders like Yuriko or Atrata. Now let's take a look at the wicked cards coming from the color black. First, we need to take a look at the blockbuster sequel that every mono black Commander player is excited about. Meat Hook Massacre 2.
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys.
There's a lot going on this card. When Meat Hook Massacre 2 enters, each player sacrifices X creatures. Whenever a creature you control dies, you may pay 3 life. If you do, return that card under your control with a finality counter on it. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, they may pay 3 life. If they don't, return that card under your control with a finality counter on it. This card is just super fun for mono black, but it's a nice option to have a Scaling Edict effect attached to it if you need it. Next we have Enduring Tenacity, a creature that when it dies comes back as an enchantment. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. A good rate for this effect, and it'll stick around after it gets removed the first time. Then we have the enchantment room Funeral Room Awakening Hall. The left door is a Blood Artist effect, and the right door has a strong ability to return all creatures from your graveyard to play. A pretty awesome card that I think I'm going to try out in my favorite Commander deck, Balthor. Unholy Annex Ritual Chamber will also be great in Commander. The left door is a Phyrexian Arena effect that triggers on your end step, giving you the card earlier than normal, and life loss can turn into a drain and gain effect if you control a demon. Sure, you can make the demon with the right door to enable this, but playing this in a deck where you have a demon as your commander seems like a no-brainer. And lastly, in black, we have another room enchantment, Polluted Cistern, Dim Oubliette. The left door has an awesome mill drain ability. Whenever one or more cards are put into your graveyard from your library, each opponent loses 1 life for each card type among those cards. This is a very solid win con for any self-mill deck, and the right door has some extra goodies for mill decks too. When you unlock this door, mill 3 cards, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Alright, let's see what heat we have for Commander with the red cards. First, we have Leyline of Resonance. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only a single creature you control, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. This is going to be great in any Spellslinger deck and provides a ton of value even if it's just casted for 4 mana. Next, we have an incredibly powerful room enchantment, Charred Foyer, Warp Space. The left door gives you an extra card each turn with its exile effect, and the right door allows you to cast 1 spell from exile for free each turn. If your deck has the ability to play cards from exile, then this is a card that you should absolutely consider including. Then we have Enduring Courage, which is just awesome in any go wide or aggro deck. Whenever another creature you control enters, it gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. This is a powerful creature card that comes back as an enchantment after it dies, so it will keep providing you value. And speaking of aggro, we have Razorkin Needlehead. It has first strike during your turn. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Razorkin Needlehead deals 1 damage to them. This is great in any red deck that wants to burn out its opponents. Plus, it's incredibly strong in any deck that wants to wheel. Shout out to all my Necusar players out there. I haven't built the deck yet, but I really want to. And lastly, in red, we have the enchantment, the Roller Crusher Ride. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a permanent or player while there are 4 more card types among cards in your graveyard, it deals double that damage instead. When the Roller Crusher Ride enters, it deals X damage to each of up to X target creatures. By itself, this is a great non-combat damage doubler, and the fact that this has an effective multi-target removal spell attached to it makes it pretty awesome. Now moving on to green, we have Terrifying Nature Happening. Now a card that you should not sleep on is Insidious Fungus. A 1/2 for 1 that has pay 2 and sack it. Choose 1. Destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, draw a card, then you may put a land card from your hand into the battlefield tapped. Any deck recurring small creatures will get so much value out of this little fungus. Omnivorous Flytrap can just get out of control. If you have Delirium, 4 card types in your graveyard, when it enters or attacks, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on 1 or 2 target creatures. Then if you have 6 card types in your graveyard, double the number of +1/+1 counters on those creatures in total. In order to enable this powerful ability, you'll likely want to be in a graveyard deck, but when this is fully enabled, it will only take a couple of triggers to end the game, of course in your favor. Next we have Enduring Vitality, a 3/3 for 3 with Vigilance. Creatures you control have tap and add 1 mana of any color. A great mana fixing creature that comes back as an enchantment after it dies. Fantastic for mana fixing and for turning all of your creatures into mana dorks. Then we have Head Shredder, a 5/5 vehicle for 4 mana, and its crew cost is only 1. Whenever Head Shredder attacks, you may mill 2 cards. Whenever 1 or more cards are put into your graveyard from your library, put them onto the battlefield tapped. This thing is going to be so awesome in self-mill decks. Being able to turn your self-milling into ramp is just super powerful. And lastly in green, we have the room enchantment Walk-in Closet, Forgotten Cellar. And this one is absolutely bonkers. The left door is a Crucible of Worlds and the right door is a Yawgmoth's Will. My friends, do not sleep on this card. It's one that you should be actively looking for when cracking packs. Now for multicolored cards, one stood out above the rest, and that is the Dimir Planeswalker Kaito Bane of Nightmares. It's a Planeswalker with ninjutsu, and it achieves this because during your turns, he's a 3/4 ninja creature with hexproof. Just whoa. The +1 ability is bonkers on a 4 mana Planeswalker. You get an emblem with ninjas you control get +1/+1. Plus this multiple times and you will get more and more of these emblems. And the +0 is incredibly powerful as well, potentially drawing you 3 cards per activation in a 4-player game. And the -2 is reasonable for slowing down problematic attackers. This is going to wreak havoc in any ninja deck. And for artifacts, there is one card that also stood out above the rest from the new commander cards, and that is Seance Board. It has Morbid. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature died this turn, put a soul counter on Seance Board. Tap it, add X of any one color, where X is the number of soul counters on Seance Board. Spend this mana to only cast instant, sorcery, demon, or spirit spells. Even just having 1 or 2 soul counters on this is powerful, but this will likely get buffed more and more as time goes on, allowing for wild amounts of ramp on a 2 mana rock. This card is going to be incredibly powerful in Spellslinger decks, and anything focused around demons and or spirits. Honestly, this is the card that I want to pull the most in collector boosters. And lastly, for commander cards, it's worth calling out the Verge land cycle. It's always awesome to have more access to untapped multicolor lands. This gives commander players more options in their decks with 2 or more colors. Now you are ready for the Duskmourn release in Limited, Standard, and Commander. Which of these cards from these formats are you looking forward to most? Is there anything you felt that we missed? Please make sure to get out and support your local game store by playing in pre-release, draft, standard, and commander events, and truly embrace this spooky time of the year with Magic's first ever horror themed set.